Welcome to the On the Edge podcast with your host, Scott Groves. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, it's Scott Groves with the On the Edge podcast. We're getting started today with my new friend, Eric Wohlwend, which I cannot pronounce your name. I have like a tongue twister with the two W's. So I'll have you pronounce it correctly. But more importantly than the pronunciation of your last name is what you've accomplished, man. We were introduced by a mutual friend that said, hey, Scott, this guy's going to land really hard for your podcast audience because he makes money in interesting ways. He's bought and held and sold and developed several hundred properties. He's got 3 books that came out in the last 12 months between he and his kids, who he's just raising into these entrepreneurial master classes. So, Eric, thanks for being on the show. I know your time is super valuable. You're in between airports right now at your home office, but tell us about you. Tell us why people might be interested in you or might want to listen to you about how you make your money, how you raise your kids, and how you live your life, because it all sounds very interesting in the few short conversations we've had.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Scott. It is absolutely wonderful to be here. And really, there isn't a lot different. I have friends that grew up very poor. I know a couple of very, very wealthy people. But really, I was just raised in typical little suburbia. We were in a little teeny town with 3 stoplights in Midwest Ohio. And I was taught the same as I think most other middle-class people are taught. Go to school, get good grades, work hard, and people really put a lot of value on that. And that was wonderful, but what if you don't want to climb the corporate ladder? What if you don't want to go back and get another degree and another degree? And I saw that, my mom had her master's, a couple of different degrees, and she couldn't get a job because she had too many degrees. They'd have to pay her more. And she calls up and says, look, I just need a job. I just got a divorce. I got to have some work and pay me minimum, pay me whatever, but I need the job. And they said, we can't do that. You have a master's. Then my dad, he was a dentist and he couldn't get a job, messed up his shoulder when he was working, lost his dexterity. And so he couldn't practice dentistry anymore. Went in to work. He wanted to teach dental hygienist. They said, well, you can't teach that. You're not a dental hygienist. He said, I'm a doctor of dental surgery. I've had these people working for me for a decade. I'm more than qualified. So my dad's overqualified. And then I meet my wife, and her father can't get a job. He keeps moving. They moved from Kansas to Chicago and finally to Ohio, where we met at Kent State. And he believed that he couldn't get a job because he didn't have a college degree. And, all of our parents worked and held down jobs. It's not like they were never working, but these were just the excuses that they got. So in one moment, they tell me, get good grades so you can get a good job. Go to college, get a degree so you can get a good job. And in the next minute, they tell you, oh, well, I can't get this because I have too high of a degree or the wrong degree. And it just never made sense. I decided I was going to raise my kids wildly differently. I didn't want to work my way up the corporate ladder. I wanted to own the ladder. I wanted to build the ladder, and then I could provide jobs for other people rather than asking for a job and asking for a raise and asking for a vacation. I'd rather be the one giving rather than taking that. So that's where we got started.
It's interesting because I've talked to a lot of entrepreneurs. We're, finally over 100 episodes on this. And a lot of people we've talked to are self-employed. They own their own thing. And it seems like that entrepreneurial spirit either comes from a father or mother who is very entrepreneurial themselves, or in a direct backlash to, I saw some horrible stuff where corporate America took advantage of my father. So I never wanted to be at the whim of another company, or people much like yourself who are like, yeah, I just saw my parents toil away. They lived the American dream. They got the college degree. They did the thing they were supposed to do. And, they were broke-ish by the time they got to retirement because things just didn't really break in their favor. And so it's interesting that that seems to be the two paths under which this entrepreneurial journey starts. And where did you start? Right out of college? Did you do some of that corporate work, or did you start building your own businesses right out of Kent State? Did you even finish Kent State? Where did your journey start a few years back?
All right. So graduated at 17 and went to Kent State. was a pretty good student, a lot better in college than I was in high school because I paid more attention since I was paying the bills. And that lasted a year, and I realized I'm working 3 jobs, traveling from one, all low level, nothing. I need to get some real world experience. I know I'm going to be a doctor. I need to get real world experience because my grades are okay, but they're not perfect. And I need something to get into med school. I never worried about whether I'd be a good doctor. It was only whether I could get it accepted to med school. And I thought the best way to do that and to actually get a little bit of money for college was to join the Army. So I spent the first 4 years on active duty in and out of Fort Bragg, became a medic to help me get into medical school, and then jumped out of a couple of airplanes, got my airborne wings. Next thing you know, I'm sapper qualified as well, so I got the tab on my shoulder. And it seems like people that like to fix broken people don't always like to blow stuff up and fall out of airplanes too. So I did very well in the Army, got promoted fast, left there, went to the reserve, and did my last 3 years of college. Now I have a pre-med degree. And right before medical school would have started, I decided that I don't really want to do that. I love being a doc. I love the idea of being a doctor. I love being a medic. But the doctors can't really make decisions. And I think as of a couple years ago, everybody, at least enough people, started to realize the doctors aren't necessarily in control. Well, back in 20 years ago, it was the insurance companies that controlled everything. And then we had Obamacare, and then we have pandemics, and people are telling you what you can prescribe and all this. And I didn't see how bad it would get, but I knew that it was getting worse than I wanted to work in. So I went in search of my life. I had a bunch of odd jobs. I was a teacher for a year, taught anatomy and physiology in a local high school. Reactivated by the Army after 9/11. Did 7 months working locally here stateside, just being a guard, babysitting a bunch of specialists that didn't really need me there unless there was a terrorist attack. And during that time, I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad and hundreds of other books. And it was a 40-minute drive to get to the arsenal I worked at and back to where I lived. Most of the other guys stayed in the barracks, but I was close enough I could drive. So I listened to cassette tapes and CDs at the time. The old day podcast.
Right.
And learned so much from guys like you that were willing to put stuff on tape that we could listen to and read the books while I was sitting there watching people open and close a gate all day. And that's where I got started in real estate. Next thing I know.
And just for context, how old were you, right? Because you kind of took the road less traveled. You did some, pre-med. You did your active duty time in the military. When you kind of discover, we'll call it just self-help and financial literacy, how old are you?
About 29.
Okay.
I know I bought my first house at 29 years old. I lived in one. I bought an old warehouse, just rundown warehouse. In fact, there's pictures of it in my book. And you can't even hardly tell it's the same structure. But my wife and I, we had just been married in 2000, and we were sleeping on a mattress on a warehouse floor. Not because we were homeless. We had just graduated from college. We had no money. I didn't have very much debt because this is before college really went up. And we chose to live there rather than pay $400 a month in rent. So we could spend that $400 buying materials, and we turned that into a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house with a 2-car garage. But that was my first rehab project that my wife and I did everything.
So this is in 2000.
That's in 2000. It is 40 degrees inside my kitchen. And the only gas line I had went to where the stove will eventually go. We laid a mattress in front of it and slept in front of a ventless gas heater.
So 22 years ago, you've got your first property. Do you remember how much you bought it for?
Oh, maybe it was the terms. It might have been around $30,000.
$30,000 dilapidated warehouse. And
yeah, there's stacks of lumber. They had put in an electric service. We had a 4-inch pipe sticking up out of the ground. There wasn't even a shutoff valve on the water line. It was a brand new water line. I soldered the shutoff valve on it and then had the city come out and turn it on. And if my wife wanted to go to the bathroom, she ran down to the street to the gas station to use the bathroom.
And 22 years later, how many properties do you own, and what's the value of those properties?
Over 350 units and 25 to $30 million total.
Amazing, man. Amazing.
But yeah, actually, it wasn't 22 years ago. We're recording this just before Christmas. I came home working second shift in the ER Christmas Eve. So Christmas morning about 2 a.m. is when I finished wiring in and turned on the furnace for the first time. And Christmas night, we slept in our bedroom. That was our Christmas present that year.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. And so you're listening to these books on tape. You're learning about financial awareness. You're basically moving in and renovating your own first property. And how does that spark the bug to be like, hey man, I'm gonna really dive in and start acquiring properties and opening businesses and writing books, and like what does the next 20 years look like?
So the next 2 years, my mom owned a couple of rentals. And my first semester out of the Army, I actually spent 13 years total. But the first semester I was in the reserve and going to Kent State, I lived in one of her rental properties that I did a bunch of work in, and I was the manager. And I swore I would never have anything to do with real estate again. Oh my God, everybody knew my mom owned it. They knew I was her son. I was supposed to collect rents. I was a nobody that went to the wrong state school when they were all hot shots that went to Mount Union. We had 3 football players and 3 soccer players living there. So they hated me for that. It was just everything you can do wrong, we did wrong. And I actually, before we started recording, mentioned I've jumped out of a few airplanes.
Right.
Well, I was airborne in the Army. I then became civilian qualified. I've got over 1,000 jumps. I was an instructor for many years. And my whole goal was just to buy 7 acres on the airport, an airplane, a handful of parachutes, and run the local jump shop. And I wanted to be a skydiving bum the rest of my life. And my mom said, well, you're really handy with a hammer. Why don't you fix up and flip a couple of properties? That'll give you the 25 grand you need for a down payment. And you can buy your drop zone. So I went and I fixed up my first one. Now, this is right after I bought it while I was still working in the reserve. So 7 days a week, 6.5 hours a day, I would go sit in front of a gate. But I got off at 12:30, and so I'd work 6 a.m. until 12:30, and I had all afternoon to work on a property. I fixed up my first one. I got it rented out, and rather than sell it, it just didn't make any sense. You sell it. You give up 10% to the real estate agent and the title companies. You give another 10 for concessions to get it to sell. Why not just get a loan and you put almost the same amount of money in your pocket, and you don't have to pay taxes on a refinance? So here I am selling, and I'm putting the same amount or maybe even less in my pocket than if I refinance. If I refinance, according to my math, which was totally wrong, but after the first house, I anticipated that I would make about $50 a month off this house every month for 15 years, and then it'd be paid off. More terrible math, even though I can add, I did not know what to put into it. I decided if I just buy 10 houses in 15 years, I'll be 45. Because remember, I'm 29. All I got to do is buy 10 houses over the next couple of years, and I can retire at 45, because, you run them out for $600 a month. That's $6,000. You can live on that.
Yeah.
And then I realized there were expenses that I had to pay. So I said, all right, well, we'll do 12. So next thing you know, I blow past 12. 2 years after I bought my first house, it was like 23 months, I owned 20 units. And I picked up, duplex, 4 units, 6 unit, bunch of single families, but I was up to 20. And I finally had enough money coming in that I never needed to work again. So I retired at 30 years old. And that lasted for about 3 weeks because I had enough money to pay the bills, even with mortgages and stuff, but not enough to, it's not like an extravagant retirement. You're just barely making it by, no vacations, and really I was bored. If you have the ability to retire at 30, you definitely don't have the ability to retire at 30.
No, we still have hills to conquer, mountains to conquer.
Oh, yeah. So my wife, a really, really quiet Kansas girl, very polite back then, still polite, not as quiet. And she says, well, what I heard was you will get out of this house. And it was implied that I would get a job of some sort or I would get a divorce. And she would never say anything like that, but that's what I heard. So I started 2 new businesses in the next couple of weeks. And one of them is now writing books, traveling around, speaking all over, spoken on a couple of continents. Unfortunately, India was on Zoom. That would have been awesome to actually go there. And the other one is the management company that she's running.
And
so she's got
and again, like, not a huge entrepreneurial background, right? College, the military, the reserves, bought a few properties. What encouraged you or enabled you or motivated you to be like, you know what, I should really throw my hat in this management arena? Like, obviously, I think the military gives all of us a certain amount of managerial skills and leadership skills, but, you know, it feels like you've gotten yourself into a bunch of arenas that you didn't know a lot about and just, you know, hit some home runs. So what gave you the confidence to do that in your 30s, to be like, well, I'm bored, I need to come out of retirement, and I'm going to start management consulting company or a speaking company, motivation company?
Have you ever looked at someone and said, man, that is an awesome business, and you're just so impressed with how smooth it works? And then you meet the guy or the girl in charge, and you're like, they are not very smart. And I don't want to say bad things, but there's one specific thing that I hate to hesitate, but you can tell the guy, he's slow. And all I heard, it was on 2 cassette tapes, so it had to be less than 2 hours. But it is about the origin of one of the huge hamburger chains that is now worldwide. And his whole idea was, when I was in the Army, we painted the chow hall and people complained less about the food. So we are going to paint our restaurants every year. And, you know, you want to keep people happy, always give them the same thing. Just make it a burger and fries and a shake or a drink. Nothing special. We're not having these huge menus like everybody. And he fought for as long as he ran his company to keep the menu very, very minimal and easy and the same, and was outrageously successful. And you look at all these things, and I thought, I guess that's where I teach my kids all the time, that if you can't teach it to a 4th grader, it's probably too complex. I've got to get everyone to understand this. So everything I do, I try and break it down. I try and write a system so a 4th grader can understand it. And I don't want to talk down to you because you're intelligent, but there is something that you don't know. Perhaps you're really good with electronics, and maybe you're good with math. But can you tell me what the pluperfect tense is? I only know that because my mom was an English teacher, and I think it stood out. If you are a doctor, I'm sure you're very advanced in chemistry and this, that, and the other thing, but you're probably missing something over here. If you are an editor, you probably don't know the Pythagorean theorem, which is something you learn early in high school, right? You just forgot what it was. You don't use it. All you do is look for commas and all my misspelled words.
Right.
So people use what they can become very advanced with whatever they use. But even the most brilliant people in the world really fall back to about the 4th grade level. So everything I do, if it is not one of your main traits, if it's not something you use all the time, if you don't exercise that muscle, it atrophies. So I try to break everything down and set it up so the most basic, easy level so anybody can understand it.
And was that your thesis for the management company of like, hey, there's something missing in the space where we can teach people how to, without feeling demeaning, dumb it down to this 4th grade level and improve their business? Because you do a lot of like consulting at this point, right?
That was it. What happened is we had a bunch of rentals, and 2007 came to be, And everybody knew that real estate always goes up. You can't get hurt. Just buy for the long term, blah, blah, blah. And most of those people were wrong. So we went out. We're at the National Real Estate Summit. And we go out to dinner probably Saturday night of the summit. And this one couple had been pressuring us, hey, take over our rentals, take over our rentals. And we decided, it's not legal. We're not going to do that. You need to have a real estate broker's license. Finally, I gave in. I said, all right, give me a couple of weeks and I will bribe some real estate broker and we'll find some way to do this. And then I went, and this broker that we had bought an awful lot of property off of said, yeah, we'd like to start a management company. I want to use your name to do it. You need to sign all the paperwork to make it legal. And my wife will immediately get her real estate license. 2.5 years from now, we will take over the management. But all the money we make between now and then, you get your large cut of that. And
seems like a good deal.
Yeah, she had just lost a bunch of money in the stock market and said, yeah, I need to replenish my retirement. This sounds like a good deal. You're an honest person. We've done a lot of business. Let's do this. So Lila goes out, gets her license to become a real estate agent. I buy enough properties personally that she meets that criteria. She's already got a bachelor's degree. And then she goes and takes the broker's test, whatever. I'm sure there were a couple of classes, and gets her broker's license. So now she is the broker and starts her own brokerage. And we transfer the management, which we started with 50 properties maybe that we owned at the time. Within a year, we had 250. Then doubled it again the next year to 500. And what started out, I wish I had thought ahead like you think, like I just know. No, I did something and I didn't remember how to do it. So the second time I did it, I wrote on a sticky note and I stuck it up here in my file cabinet. And then the sticky note turned into, we need to write this down on a bigger piece of paper. And now there's a magnet holding it up. And now I can't find the sticky note. So we type it out in the computer and I save it wherever it's logical. And then I can't figure out where I saved it in the computer or what I called it. So we go, and my wife types out all of these notes that we have stuck all over, remembering how to do stuff. And she types them. I find the stuff I've typed in the computer. We put them all together. And really the best part of our system is when I learned how to create a table of contents in Microsoft Word. And so we went from sticky notes to now we've got maybe a 140-page systems manual of exactly what to do in every circumstance. And every time something else goes wrong, if it goes wrong more than once, we write it down and shove it in there so people can just look in the system and figure it out.
And, usually entrepreneurs break at scale, right? When I hear you going from I own 10 properties to my own 50 properties, and then we went to 250 properties under management, usually at some point the system completely breaks and shatters and falls apart. And I've heard you already several times mention your wife, which I think is awesome and endearing, and she's obviously a trooper. Has it been her organizational skills or your guys' partnership that has allowed you guys? Okay, maybe not. Let me just ask it more open-ended. What has allowed you guys to scale without the bandwidth completely going away and everything disintegrating? Because usually that's what entrepreneurs do, and then they realize on the next business they've got to bring in a CEO or a COO or something like that. So what has allowed you guys to scale without completely destroying your own foundation?
Our support of each other. Really coming back, the book that I just wrote, Family Success Triangle, it is absolutely 100% about how did we grow our business and our family. And I mean that. We are growing our family and we are teaching our business as much as we're teaching our kids and growing our business. Everything is integrated. It's not a balance. It's just what we do all the time, every day. So, yeah, the reason I laughed, my wife, if you ask her, would definitely not say that she is organized. She has the most clutter and is always taking another or reading another book on organization, trying to make stuff easier. She has, however, been unbelievably supportive when I got started, the first thing I said was, look, you've got a job. I'm starting a business, and I don't care what you do. You don't have to be part of it. Just don't you ever tell me no. And as long as you never say no, that's fine. And then she decided, well, I want to be part of it. Now, I can't tell you what's going on in her brokerage. I could step in and run if I had to, but it's amazing. When she leaves, she goes working with the Boy Scouts once a month for a week. Excuse me, once a year for a week. She goes to Boy Scout camp. And I step in and check on her business, which does pretty well now because she's got good systems that run everything. But there were a couple of years she came home after being gone for a week. She goes, yeah, I think my team can handle it on their own without me. We travel almost 6 months a year. So we are always gone for 6, 7 days, 10 days here, 14 days there. I don't know how she manages to keep up and not let stuff fall apart as bad as it was, 3, 4, 5 years ago. But when she first started doing that, I went in and let her have a couple of hours when she got home and relaxed and telling me all the good stories of what her and the kids did. And then said, okay. She's like, well, how's the business? I said, get a piece of paper. And 3 pages of notes later, I told her about all the changes that I had created. So, but no, we worked very well together. One thing in a marriage, we decided under no circumstance do we ever go to bed angry. And we had a fight. Something went wrong. It doesn't matter what. And I thought we were through it. And I went to bed and it's 2 a.m. and I wake up furious. And I wake her up and we go downstairs and sit in front of the fireplace and we talk. Because no marriage has ever ended. No divorce has ever been caused over one day of problems, no matter how bad.
Right.
And I don't know, some old guy that had been married for a long time, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, whatever, it told me, never go to bed angry, no matter what.
I love it.
And
yeah.
That's been some of the most sound advice I've ever got.
I've heard something similar because that resentment just grows and then, a day turns into a week, turns into a year, turns into a divorce, 5 years later because of passive aggressiveness or whatnot. Tell me more about the family success triangle. Like, what's the thesis of the book? Because I know you're big on integrating your family into your business, which, somebody operating at your level, several businesses, 350 rentals, trying to change the world with the books that you're publishing. If you didn't integrate your kids into your business, there would be that risk of, hey, great, I made my kids financially sound.
Trust fund babies.
Yeah, exactly. Complete trust fund babies. They'll never worry for money in their life, and they've got a drug addiction, or they're spending all this hard-earned money on therapy because they didn't see their dad, or mom never hugged me or came to a soccer game or whatnot. So how are you? I've heard you in just the short few times that we've spoken talk about integration and how that all really works together. How did you bring your kids from an early age into the business, and what are they doing now as part of the family success triangle?
When my first one, Devin, was 2 weeks old, he went to a closing for an 8-unit apartment building. At the time, it was the biggest building we owned. We had 30 or 40 units is what that took us up to, something like that. And the contractors got behind. By then, I knew that I couldn't hire enough. I couldn't do it. I learned that, I don't know, somewhere around house 14 or 15. I just couldn't be the guy that swung the hammer every day. And so I broke down and figured out a way and budgeted in what's it cost to hire a professional rather than do it on my own. And that's how I got to the first barrier. Most people that buy houses can't buy more than 30 to 50. They just get hung up there. And then your next barrier is about 100 because you hire, a couple of helpers, but you don't have the organizational skills to run a team. And then your next barrier is about 250. But by the time you hit 250, it actually gets far easier because now I can hire somebody really good about management and sales to do the showings. I can hire somebody good with numbers to do the bookkeeping. I can have an HVAC guy on staff that can also do other maintenance, stuff like that. At this time, I didn't have that. What I did have was an infant and I was collecting 1 month of rent. I think it was only $350 for this store on an 8-unit building. And that was nowhere near what I needed to pay the mortgage. And we are ripping out the boiler and putting in electric baseboard heat, which is a fantastic idea for the long term. So now the tenants pay their own heat, and a terrible 6 months of work. And so Devin ended up growing up on a pack and play. And I swear for the first year or two of his life, he couldn't sleep unless there was a compressor running next to him. And I'd go in and I'd run the electrical. I'd do the drywall. And my wife would do all the painting. And we would work in the office for 4 days. And then Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, we'd be working on the apartment building nonstop, 16, 18 hours a day, with, a couple-month-old child. Then every Wednesday, I had a breakfast meeting, and I would carry him in a car carrier. And one of the first meetings, somebody asked me, like, hey, you're bringing an infant to a business meeting? I said, look, I'm the one that runs the meeting. You want my free advice? Deal with my kid. And so Devin has been going there every week since he was born. And then Ethan came along, and with 2 of them, it got a little bit more difficult. So they wouldn't always go, but they'd still go frequently. And by the time he got through I'm going to scream right in the middle of the best part of the discussion.
Right.
They started going every week again. And that is how they did this, and everything they learned. I never once told them, go to school and get good grades. I said, if you're going to get a job, you only take a job so you can learn from it. I just had a very good friend of mine who was a millionaire, and he got a job working McDonald's for minimum wage, but he could go back. He's a pipe fitter, makes, well into the 6 figures doing manual labor. He said, no, I'm done with that. He owns enough properties, and I would be willing to bet that almost all, if not all of them, are free and clear. So he is definitely not hurting for cash flow. But he got so tired of his little crew of 2 or 3 people going to Lowe's 3, 4, 5 times a day. They could never be organized. They were always out of something. He said, all I do is drive back and forth to the store. And I don't want to babysit a bunch of grown men that should know how to do this. He went and I don't know. I had a job. I worked at Burger King for a couple of months, and it taught me more about systems than you can imagine. So all of you that want to go pay for a $10,000 course for a week, that's great. Or you could just work for minimum wage for a month or two, and you'll learn so much about systems working at one of these big hamburger. I mean, they've got 100% turnover of 16-year-old kids.
Right. And somehow my quarter pounder with cheese always tastes the same.
Right. If they can do that, well, my buddy Jeff, he comes back. He goes, yeah, shows up to our business meeting. Now it's Wednesday night instead of in the morning. Said, what are you doing? He goes, I just left McDonald's for the last time. I go, what are you talking about? He goes, yeah, it was my last day. I was like, oh, that's right. I had totally forgot. He told my wife that he got a job working at McDonald's. He was there for 2 months, just like he planned. He came back. He was showing me pictures, designed this brilliant system. He goes, I pull it, lower the tailgate. It's set up in 15 minutes, and we have a job site in a box. Everything is there. If this runs out, they throw it in the lower drawer. I know exactly what to buy. I go to Lowe's once every day or two, and we never run out of stuff. All the lists, change order, whatever, all posted on the side. Just design this brilliant system. And then he tells a story at dinner.
I just want to recap here. This is a buddy of yours who runs a construction team, and he's a millionaire, maybe a multimillionaire with great cash flow, and he quit doing what he was doing for 2 months to go work at McDonald's so he could better learn systems, process, and fulfillment. Basically, a conveyor belt type of business.
And he had said, anybody that's ever worked at McDonald's, which I haven't, something about, I knew if there's a green pan there, we were out of muffins. He goes, nobody had to tell me, I just, and this was part of his story. But yeah, and I'm sure he still ran his construction and stuff during the day, but he took 20, 30, 40 hours of the week out to work at a fast food joint to better learn systems.
Amazing.
And that is the way that I do things. I really get down in the dirt. I was a sergeant in the Army. I was not an officer. Yeah, I made it up to E7, and I had a bunch of people working for me. But really, it's the boots on the ground. It's being out in the dirt and the hustle and bustle where you learn stuff. I had just talked to or read another guy, I think it was on Instagram, that he just bought this very expensive heating business, plans to make piles of money, relocating from Texas to Pennsylvania. And he went and sat there and watched and shut his mouth for 3 days. And it reminds me of when I was taking over a new command or moving to a new unit in the Army. You walk in, and the first couple of days, you just shut up and listen. And he took out the people that were putting in the furnaces. He got to know the secretaries that did the scheduling. He got to know all of the different members of the team before he opened his mouth and made any changes.
I love that. And I think a lot of people don't understand this about the military, Eric, is, the Navy SEALs, the Delta Force, the Ranger, the Assault on Action, all that stuff gets the headlines and the movies and the sexy Hollywood stuff. But what the military really is, it's a logistics company. I mean, to get food and shelter and bombs and bullets from Fort Riley, Kansas to the middle of the Iraqi desert, and to not run out of fuel and to not run out of food and to not run out of batteries for night vision goggles, it's really just a logistical masterpiece, which is starting to inform me about you of like, oh yeah, it didn't matter whether you went into buying or selling houses or running a real estate brokerage or opening a publishing house or a management school. What your superpower appears to be is logistics. How do I get from point A to point B, and then just replicate that model? Is that a fair assessment?
Thinking about it like that, yes, it is. I was one of the frontline troops. I was an airborne sapper, and we'd get a call if there's a shot fired in anger anywhere in the world. It pretty much always comes down to the 82nd Airborne, Navy SEALs, where are we assaulting? But we would go through rotations and be on 45-minute recall. So 45 minutes from the time we get a call, you're out at a bar, you're dancing and drinking Pepsi. They would turn on all the lights, turn off the music in the middle of a nightclub, and say, if you're drinking Pepsi, head back to base. Here's a list of the units that just got called up. And then 5 minutes later, the music's back on and half the guys are running out the door. But that is how I lived the first half of my adult life. And they told us it took 7 people in the supply chain to get us the beans and bullets where we need them so we didn't die. And I have been in places like Haiti where we didn't have enough water. We're living on 2 quarts of water a day. Army regulations state I need to drink 4 quarts an hour just to maintain my life. I've got flak jackets on, which adds 10 degrees. It's unbelievably hot and humid. You're practically at the equator, and everybody is sunburnt, from here up to their neck. Whatever's showing is terribly sunburnt. Worst sunburn I ever had was a black female came in, and she couldn't believe this excruciating pain. And I said, you're sunburned. She goes, look at me. I can't get sunburned. I said, you can here.
Yeah, Haiti's different. You get down by the equator, it's a different game how hot the sun
brutal. Is. Yeah, and I mean, you're from LA. That's a lot closer, but it is still not right at the equator. Yeah. And so we've got the heat, not to mention there's some combatants out there and some other bad things going on. And you're working, doing pretty stressful stuff, digging holes, filling sandbags, putting in guard towers. And that's what we did. We were in there and we held the fort, put up the concertina wire, the sandbags and everything until we had it built out. And then we went home. And the real soldiers went in and sat around for a year. And we were like, yeah, in and out as fast as we can. We got the Expeditionary Medal. Let's go home.
So I want to dig into the book a little bit more. Explain to me the success triangle. Like what are the sides or the points of the triangle, and how does that relate to kind of the speaking and touring that you've been doing recently?
All right, just like I built my businesses, and you've mentioned how many we have, I raised my kids the same way. We started, and we've got the business first. The business gives us time to be there for the children. And we have homeschool. We just now got a curriculum, but we started writing all of our own stuff up until, well, Devin's been in college since he was 12. I found a way to get him accepted into college so he can get free classes at 12 years old. He passed the test to get in, so they let him. So this is his third year. And Ethan has no desire to do that, even though he's 13, and that's fine. He can do whatever he wants. But the business gave us the flexibility. And you run businesses. A lot of people listen to this. They know you're going to put in 18-hour days. Sometimes you're going to go 2 days without sleep. And you can also schedule what hours of the day you're working.
Right.
You generally have a lot more control. Like, I chose what time I wanted to talk to you. You said, here's a list. I pick a time. Well, if my kid has jujitsu tonight, I'm not going to pick 5 o'clock because I want to take him and watch him roll. If, I have to go to an auction, I can't change that. So we don't play in kids' time when there's an auction I want to be at. And so the business gave us the time to raise the children. The children started helping us in business from the time they were like 3 or 4 years old. I taught Devin how to reconcile accounts like it was a memory game. And he came in and said, Dad, want to play? I said, no, I want some coffee or something like that. Here, you sit down and just take this mouse, and if you find the number, here's the piece of paper, look on the computer screen. If you can match your numbers up, just like memory, and put a check mark beside it, when you get down to the bottom, if that bottom right corner number is 0, you win, and I'll buy you some ice cream. And that's how he started working in the business. And now he's making better decisions and is helping to grow and work on the business. And so he does that. That gives us more money coming in from the business, which allows us to buy more investments. The investments, we need to hire more contractors to fix them up and to keep them rented. It grows the business. The business brings in more money. The investments bring in more money. It gives us more time to hire higher quality people and spend more time with our family. So there's your triangle: business, investing, family. And every one of them goes back and forth. Everyone leads to the other. It's not a one-way trip.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because I know a lot of people. One of the things that's been great about doing home loans for 22 years is that you come across everybody from, what do we talk? Condo to castle is in LA, four blocks apart in Los Feliz. You would have the multi-million-dollar compound where Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie were living, and 4 blocks down the street, you could find a $230,000 condo on the wrong side of the tracks. That's changed a little bit in the last 10 years as everything there has gotten more expensive. But I've seen people who have minimum wage jobs and are a slave to their job. And I've seen people that have multi-million-dollar W-2s, big boys at tech companies, entertainment companies, and they're also slaves to their job. And they never fill out this triangle of like, I need the assets to buy the investments to give myself more time so the family can work in the business, and it becomes this virtuous triangle. In your case, I was going to say circle. They never get there. And, with every incremental pay raise that they get on their W-2, they buy, I've fallen into this trap myself. You buy a fancier car, you buy a bigger house, you buy more shit, you buy 8 pairs of shoes in different colors, versus like, no, let's reinvest it so we can spend more time with the family, because then the family will be interested in the business instead of resentful of it. And then we'll make more money to get into the investments. And just like, man, what a great triangle you've kind of laid out that I think a lot of people can't articulate. So where are you at right now with the kids in the business? What are they doing?
If I can refer to what you just said first.
For sure.
I was in that same boat. We had a lot of months left at the end of my money, and my wife and I both worked, and we never made more than $45,000 a year. We were in real estate for more than 10 years, which real estate gives you massive depreciation and other benefits. But yeah, we had never had an adjusted gross income of about 45 grand. even well into real estate now. I wish I could get back down there and pay that much less in taxes. Right. But on the other hand, I'd rather have the income.
Right. Yeah. You rather have the planes and the toys than worry about tax rates.
But no. So I lost my job. Now we're in college. I'm working as an orderly in the ER. I'm a medic, but not using that. Though 1 weekend a month for the Army doesn't really give you any money. It's, face it, 2 days. She's working. We're both making $8.50 an hour. And then I lost that job. I got another job as a high school teacher. I mean, what are you going to do with a pre-med degree if you don't go to med school? Apparently, you can teach at a private high school.
There you go.
You don't need a certificate. So I've never had a day of teaching classes in my life. I was an instructor in the Army, though. I can handle a group of teenagers. They're just a year or two younger than the privates that I got in the Army.
Right.
And so I doubled my income. I made $23,700 a year as a teacher with a college degree. And that was basically twice as much as I had made working in the ER. And we covered the shortfall where we didn't have money, but we didn't go out to a lot more dinners. We didn't, get massive cable subscriptions or whatever.
Yeah.
We just kept spending about maybe 10% more at most, even though my income went up 50% and hers stayed the same. And then the next year I lose that job, drop of enrollment, getting rid of the new teacher. Obviously I'm the one to go. And so I start bumming around the Army and volunteering for things here and there. And I worked through the summer there. 9/11 had just happened. So there was plenty of extra work. And finally they picked me up for a solid 7 months at one of the duty stations. And then I wasn't needed there. So I lost that job. So basically I've lost 3 jobs in 2 years. But I doubled my money going from ER to teaching. I doubled it again going from teaching to being E6 in the Army at the time. And I got done with that. And I said, that's it. I've lost 3 jobs. I'm never doing this again. But each time I made more, we decided that we would invest it. And I didn't know how to invest, so I started learning how to invest. And that's when I was really reading these. That's when I bought the first one. And we have exactly one rental property. My wife makes $8.50 an hour maybe. And I don't have a job. And we have a first and second mortgage on the warehouse because that's how much money I spent fixing it into a livable house. And I said, that's it. I came home. I actually left my last duty station in camouflage uniform. I go straight to the bank and I apply for a loan. And this is back in 2003 when everybody could get a loan.
Right.
And so, yeah, they pre-approved me for a loan, even though I don't know what house I'm going to buy. My wife comes home from work that afternoon. I say, good news. I'm a full-time real estate investor. And she says, does that mean you lost another job? But that was the start of it. And so, yes, if you are getting these big raises, you just have to commit. Keep spending the same amount of money. All right. If you're not quite making it, you're 10% shy and you get a 20% raise, then you have 10% left over. If you're living in LA and there's one of you living in an efficiency apartment, maybe there's 2 of you, maybe you got a kid, you cannot live on minimum wage with 2 people working full time. Well, if you can't live anyways, there's no reason to not put 10% aside to start with. Right? You're already broke. Eat ramen a couple more times.
Right.
But you can put something aside. If you don't know what to invest in, go and buy yourself an ounce of silver. It's $30. It is not the amount of money you invest. It is the act of always investing. So I tell everybody that comes to my dinners, all right, you don't need to start out with a house. You don't need to save up a down payment, but you do need to buy an investment so you understand. And I'm not saying go throw $20,000 into something that you don't understand. If you can't afford to lose 20 grand, that's a stupid idea.
Right.
First, you need to get the education. But if there is some way you can put a little teeny bit of money into it, something that you can afford to lose, even if it hurts a little, you learn, or at least I learn, and most people learn far, far faster if they've got skin in the game.
For sure.
You can sit there.
And you nailed it. You said it's the act of investing, right? It's the mindset of investing. It's people will argue till you're blue in the face. Should I buy whole life insurance or should I buy term and invest the rest? Should I buy a rental property or should I do crypto? None of that matters unless you start flexing that muscle and fall in love with the act of investing. Because really all you're doing is you're coming up with excuses to have analysis paralysis on, should I buy this? Should I be gold? Should I be silver? Should I be long the market, short the market? Well, just do something. just do something to get started.
And I'll promise you, let me get this out of the way, okay? I promise you will fail. You will make a bad decision. You will screw something up. And if you are paying attention and figure it out quick enough, you can turn that into one of your best successes. But nobody goes from zero to multi-millions without doing something wrong.
Right.
This is not school. You can't study and ace the test.
Yeah.
You will make mistakes. Okay, identify them and try really hard to not make the same mistake twice.
Yeah.
If you can hire a mentor or a coach to help you get through, you'll still make one or two of their mistakes, but hopefully not as bad as they did. Right? Don't try to be the person that never makes mistakes. This is how I got my kids started investing. They went out and bought silver at a very, very early age. About the only gift I give them is every Christmas they know they're going to get a 10-ounce bar of silver. So at the time, that was $140 per child, right? Now it's like $265. I just bought a stack of them to give away. It's $265 for a 10-ounce bar of silver as of a week or two ago when I bought them. So if you can't do that, spend the $25 or $30 on a 1-ounce piece of silver. At least it's something. And then give them. I love Mike Maloney's Guide to Investing in Silver and Gold. Awesome book. One of the Rich Dad series. But even more so than that, for the people that say, oh, I don't read, watch the Hidden Secrets of Money videos. Also made by Mike Maloney. They're on YouTube, goldsilver.com. My kids have that memorized. They can tell you, I don't know, maybe it's episode 4, but they just love a couple of these episodes. There's 10 episodes, high quality, probably cost $100,000 to put together each one. And they're just free on YouTube. You get a college degree education for no money by looking up the right books and watching some of these videos on YouTube and listening to podcasts like yours.
So this is interesting because somebody listening to this might be rolling their eyes and be like, well, that's super easy for you, Eric. You started buying property in 2000. It was cheap. And if you weathered the storm of 2008, 2009, you got properties even cheaper. But, I can't start today because properties are so much more expensive and interest rates are so much higher and it's so much harder to qualify for a loan. And the stock market feels expensive and gold feels expensive. And this will come out early 2023. There's been a couple of crypto companies that shut down. It's just early. It's just easy for you, Eric, because you got a 20-year head start and you don't understand how hard it is to invest in 2022, 2023. So for that naysayer that's rolling their eyes and just saying your timing was lucky and et cetera, every excuse in the book, because I know right before we started recording, you said you just picked up a few more properties. Where are you investing? Where are you buying properties? What type of value add are you looking for? And, as your cash flow is now spinning off way more money a month than you can actually spend, where is Eric putting his money in 2023?
Oil wells.
Okay.
This has been my newest investments. But let me talk to that naysayer. You know what? You are absolutely right. It is 2023 and you can't do what I do. You can't get there. You can't do it the same way. And once you recognize that, I don't see that as a problem that's holding you back. I see that as a wonderful thing that you're smart enough to know the difference. I thought exactly like they are thinking today, because my mom owned a couple of rental properties. After her and my dad got divorced, she got remarried, and they ended up that one awful, huge house. 3 bedrooms were rentable. By the time I moved in, we made it to 7 bedrooms, and I lived in a little closet. It was like Harry Potter in the attic, and freezing up there. But hey, it was a place to stay. And I helped do a bunch of work around there. And so sweat equity, if you want to get into it, one way to do it is just find somebody that's doing something and go work for them for free. I have had multiple people that came and worked for me. The presidents and leaders of some of the real estate investment groups around come over, and they'll spend a day working in our office, which is a whole lot more of us teaching them. But they just want to see how our systems work. How can you get, we managed about 1,000 units at one time. My wife did. They said, why are we stuck at 200, 250? Why can't I get bigger? What do you do that makes it work? Find people that are doing what you do and go work with them. I looked at my mom. I said, but Mom, man, you own like 6 properties. You know, maybe it was 10. How could any one person own that much? I'd never known you could own so much. And I'm buying my first one. She goes, oh, it's awful. I have 3 empties. I said, yeah, but that's like 3 out of 10. That's 30%. I have 1 empty out of 1. And I realized the difference between these big guys and girls that had it, at 10 times more than me. And then you shoot past, and a year later, now I've got twice as many as her. And then it just kept going and going. And over 2022, I've got an auction I'm going to tomorrow. I know my 13-year-old wants to bid on 2 properties, so he's liable to buy 1 or 2 of those. I've got 3 more that if I have time before it gets dark tonight, I'm going to drive past and look at and see if I want to buy.
So there is still opportunity in your mind in the real estate market.
Opportunity.
I love that.
I can tell you so many ways. For my website, I'm sure I have a list, 25 ways to buy real estate. And number 25 is talk to a realtor. It is always dead last on the list. But website's clearskytrainer.com. And we talk about, I've got a free newsletter for anybody that's interested. I just write a 1 or 2 page thing. Sometimes my wife writes something about management or whatever she is the best at. Sometimes my kid throws in some stuff. So there's always a newsletter comes out every Wednesday, although that might switch to Friday. We're not sure.
And you say Clear Sky Trainer. I got it here right now. Your website obviously has links to the book, and we'll make sure that we link to that article on 25 ways to buy a home.
Yeah, and that here's just one that comes up frequently. Right now in this market, it is absolutely different, but it is no different than when I got started. And 3, 4, 5. It was easier for me to get loans then. That is true. But then I didn't have a job, so it wasn't really that easy. If you have a job, then it's a lot easier for you to get a loan today than it was for me then, right? And remember, I lost my job when I had exactly 1 rental property, the house I lived in, and 1 rental. So you are starting at the same place as me. Last year, over 2020, 21, and 22, you were seeing the highest peak bubble rates for prices. Stuff is selling for above asking in hours. That's what I went through in 2003, 4, 5, maybe more like 4, 5, 6. Mm-hmm. But by 7, it was getting weaker. The only difference is it really took us 3 years to hit the bottom. In 2010, I owned about 75 units, and I bought my first 50 unit. So I almost doubled in size with 1 purchase. You are getting that opportunity, and I think it's happening even faster this time. So get out there and get ready. Don't wait for the bottom. Buy one now. Find a way to get creative financing, even if you don't have money. Now is the time, because if you wait for the bottom, first off, you're going to miss it. Nobody times it perfectly.
Right.
If you do accidentally get lucky, then you're going to say, well, I'll just wait until I find another one that is that good when you got it at the perfect time.
Right.
It will never be perfect. You know, the perfect time? 20 years ago when I got started. But if you didn't start then, maybe because you're 25 years old, then today is the perfect time.
Right.
Go out and take action right now. Do whatever it takes to get an investment. Join a group. I think that with this massive drive, I have my very strong opinions about the government after working for them for 13 years and just everything else they did. And I believe that if they are certain that we are not going to drive an internal combustion engine anymore after 2030, I'm loading up on oil wells. They're driving all the big money out of it, and I am buying energy. I'm buying uranium. I am investing in drilling. I've got money into 2 different oil wells so far this year, and never did that again. Ask me a year from now if it's a good investment or not. It might be terrible.
Right, but like you said, when you have your foundation, when you have your your triangle is strong, right? You've got time with your family, you've got the investments, the business is spinning off capital. I know enough about you already to know that you're not all in on oil the way some of these morons went all in on crypto. It's like it's a piece of your strategy, and I love the fact that the first piece of everybody's strategy. It just seems like the wealthier people I talk to, it always comes back to that foundation as real estate, right? Like, it's cool. All the 100 millionaires out there, they've got all kinds of different income streams and whatnot. But just about 80, 90% of the very wealthy people I know, they started in real estate. They got expertise in real estate. They built out additional businesses in they were all in on real estate, whether it was fix and flip your own stuff or be a loan officer or be a realtor and grow those companies, whatever. It all started there. And then you can branch out with the cool stuff, the uranium, the oil, the crypto, whatever you want to do.
You know, I sat down at a bar in LA. It started in a bar in Orlando at one of these seminars I went to as a student. And we drew on a little cocktail napkin. Here's real estate. This is where you are today. And you need to own the real estate brokerage that sells it. You need to own the management company that rents it. You need to own the construction company that fixes it and the mortgage broker and blah. And we just had this little star. And then I'm at a bar with a really great financial planner. Became a good friend of mine. He's on Fox News talking about finances every week. So I'm sitting down and talk about an underpriced lunch. I bought him lunch and got thousands of dollars worth of value drawn out on napkins again. How I should set up my corporate structure and trusts and everything. But it all started there with just buying a single family home and renting it to 4 college girls. And that was the first rental I had ever done. And I learned that, yes, you can make more renting it out by the bedroom. And you have to deal with 8 parents. Sometimes they're divorced, so it's like double, plus all of the children that are living there. And they have never lived outside of mommy and daddy's house, which adds on even more problems. And then I grew and I realized that even though my mom said this is where you make the most money, and that's what she loved to do, that's a lot of hassle. And you can't scale if you're doing everything. And are you really making that much more if you have to pay to have the yard mowed every week because college kids aren't going to mow it?
Right.
And so I realized that I don't want any more than 10% in any one niche. So I had 10% or less college rentals, 10% or less Section 8, 10% or less low income that made incredible profits, but they also did the most damage.
Right.
So you have to factor that in over the years. No more than 10% of the really pretty, man, I'd love to live their houses because they don't make any money. It's nice to have it. It holds equity.
Right.
And you can count on the people paying a little bit more, but they barely break even until you pay off the mortgage.
Right.
And so I've set up the entire investing career. Yeah, I lost. Well, let's put it this way. I just read an email. My last email before I got on this podcast with you was from my lawyer. I had almost $1 million, well over 900,000 at Celsius. at the peak. But I never kept more. And I met Alex Mashinsky. I mean, he is definitely not SPF. A wild difference here. It doesn't mean I'm going to get much of my money back, but I think we will get some. So yeah, I've been investing in Bitcoin since it was $800 and Ethereum at $14, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't put it all. I moved 40 more Ethereum in at the last minute. That was idiotic. But you can't look back at the mistakes you made, because I set up a system and I kept half my crypto offline in a Trezor. I never put more than 10 to 20% in the altcoins.
Right.
I understood some were going to go crazy and others were going to crash. But I stuck with a lot of Bitcoin and a generous allocation to Ethereum. I don't put more than 10% of my total net worth. And crypto got up a little bit above that when it hit the peak. But I try and keep it. Crypto is a fringe asset. I also want to have 5 to 10% of my net worth in gold and silver. It's the 10% that I always want to underperform. I don't ever want to make money on gold.
Right.
Because if that 10% makes money, it means the other 90% went terribly wrong.
Right. The gold is a hedge.
And that's besides the point. It's my insurance. It is my hedge. That's it. And you want to argue about should I buy gold or you should have both. They're for different reasons, though. Just like, Bitcoin and Ethereum have different use cases. But either way, if you're saying, oh, I want to do all this and gold's absolutely going to skyrocket or oil's going to go up, it can't go anywhere but up. You should, unless you are drilling the wells yourself, you should not have 50% of your money in oil.
Right.
Okay. I have far too much in real estate because that is my main business. And I realize we need to get down. So a couple of years ago, we have been working very hard to refinance. I mean, it was like a gift from heaven. They're giving me loans at 4% on commercial properties. And I got a 4.75% loan, and inflation 7, 8, 9%. I mean, the inflation is literally paying off a couple percent a year. The rents are going up more than enough to cover it, and I can't adjust my rates for another 5 years. It's just, real estate is the place to be. And it was brilliant that I started buying earlier. But guess what? We're about to hit another bottom. I don't know if it'll be a year or two or what. Now's the time. Start. Buy one, even if you pay too much, even if you make mistakes, because then when the great deals are here, and by the way, for more than 2 years, I've been predicting that real estate prices would go down this November, as in a month or two ago.
Congrats. Good prediction.
And I said it'll start about then and go for at least 18 months. Don't know how, but it won't be the same as 2007 and 8, but it will rhyme.
Yeah, I agree. Hey,
So now is the time to get started in this stuff and just keep 10% aside for insurance. And if you believe that that's gold and silver, do it that way. If you think it's Bitcoin, do it that way. If you think it's cash in the bank or T-bills, then do it that way. But you got to have some type in the Army. You can have any amount of roving patrols or fixed bases, but you always must keep a reserve. If you've ever watched any war film, think The Patriot. The time they always get their butts kicked is when they go all in and throw the reserve in. Don't ever do that.
Yeah, you got to always have
that is a sign that you're at the top of the market.
You always got to have the QRF. You always got to have somebody to respond.
Yes. Set up, which is what I do with my kids. I tell them they had jars. Put this much into education, this much into investing, this much into long-term savings. If you want to buy that new Lego Death Star, you save up money for that. Savings is not the end. It is not the goal. It is the means to get to the end. So if I frequently say bad things about savings, That's not to say you shouldn't save for the next year or so to come up with a down payment. You might need a down payment, and you should always try to be more creative so you don't need the down payment. You should spend some of your money on education so you can learn how to not use a down payment, but don't count on that until you've done a deal or two like that. Also be setting money aside. So yeah, it's all splitting, and it's all percentages. I don't care how many millions you have in real estate or the stock market or whatever. Is it God, I hate that word, diversification. But really, you need to know how to diversify. And that is not buying 10 different stocks. It's not buying 20 hedge funds or mutual funds that all own the same stocks. It's having some hard assets. And if you drop it on your foot and it doesn't break your toe, it's not a hard asset. A piece of paper that says you own gold is not gold.
Right.
I want bricks and mortar. I want real gold in a non-bank vault. I want to have cash flowing assets. Maybe that is your business. If you're a chiropractor, a doctor, or whatever, then I hope the chiropractors start a string. Massage therapists start a string of massage parlors so they could be the business owner. And the one, she still got to work doing massages every Thursday. And the biggest thing she did is she loved to do it, but didn't want to do it every day. And she hated payroll. So making two little changes dramatically increased her business enough that she could go out and start another location and just work one day a week with her favorite clients only and hire all these other people. And she's making a percentage of profit there. If you're a beautician, if you do nails, I have a store that's been rented out for many, many years, and I helped just a little bit with a lady, started doing hair and then rented out nail salon. She was collecting more in rent from these girls that were doing nails, and then she put in tanning beds and all this stuff. She's getting more rent from them. She never needed to do anybody's hair again. She could put hundreds of dollars in her pocket without working just from their rent after she paid the rent from my building.
I love it.
There's so many different ways you can do this.
I got a few rapid fire questions for you because I know your time is valuable. So, favorite movie and why?
Oh, Matrix is way up there. There's an awful lot of historical great ones, but man, we watched The Matrix and I was first getting started, and it seemed like so much of this, they just totally got it. I can see the way the world is working. And this is when I first started seeing things in a different light rather than save money and get a good job. And so, yeah, I'd say that is why.
I love it. I love The Matrix. You're a first, by the way, to call it The Matrix, and it's one of my favorite movies. Thing you're most proud of right now with your kids who are, just turned 13 and 16, things you're most proud of about them?
That Ethan, the young one, has learned how to lose and not be a sore loser. Boy, did he hate that. They have done spectacular things. Pretty proud that my 15-year-old is an accredited investor. He got to buy into the same first oil well as me, and he did that all on his own without ever getting a dollar from me.
Amazing.
And my younger one is becoming a pretty accomplished pilot. He can barely see over the dashboard and almost landed my little airplane when we were coming, which is not that little. It still has 2 engines. But yeah, I think by this summer, he will be able to land that plane. And he was flying IFR straight through the clouds, zero visibility. He kept the thing straighter than me without the autopilot on.
Oh, that's amazing, man.
Yeah, that's what I am the most proud of my kids. And Devin is very businesslike. He's on all kinds of podcasts. He spoke on the same stage as Ken McElroy, Robert Kiyosaki, George Gammon. But he was out in Scottsdale speaking a few months ago, promoting his book.
I love that. Give me either a financial prediction for 2023 or maybe, what's that 10% bucket where you're most excited about potential growth? Give me something for the audience to bite into for 2023.
Well, I can guarantee I'm going to buy more faster. That is one of my taglines.
Buy more faster. I like it.
Buy more faster. And to buy more hard assets that cash flow faster. But that doesn't roll off the tongue as easy as buy more faster.
And when you say buy more hard assets, obviously we're talking about property, but are you looking to acquire, businesses where maybe the owners are looking to get out, or are you looking at, lemonade stands, or what are you?
I am looking, I don't want to take active ownership, although I've really considered dramatically increasing my construction company. We seem to be at a bottom there. And I have more of an active role in running the construction company than any of the others. My wife runs the real estate brokerage. I see it's going to be a hard couple of years for her business.
Mm-hmm.
I think there'll be a lot of disgruntled landlords, and that absolutely will continue to be the number one place I buy properties. I would recommend for everybody to talk to retiring landlords that are fed up, that want out. They can't believe the CDC said you can't evict people, and they're just done. I took a different approach. I sued the CDC and beat them. And other people just gave up, and I went in and bought all the properties they had left. I bought out 2-3 small landlords in the last year. So go to real estate groups, talk to them. Go to eviction court, talk to people that are evicting, ask them if they want to sell. I think that's my best prediction. Best place to find really, really great deals on real estate is from disgruntled landlords.
Love it.
I think that interest rates will go up longer and higher than most people think. And all of these new people that are just getting in and say, oh, yeah, they're going to drop. Yeah, they will go back to normal, but normal is like 6%.
Right.
We are normal. Maybe we're a hair above normal. But really, normal interest rates for 6,000 years have been roughly 6% since the beginning of recorded history. So thinking that normal is going down where you can get a 2.5% home mortgage and a 3 or 4% business loan, that's not normal.
Never going to happen in our lifetime again.
Right. So I would not count on that. I would count on property values in the bubble cities. All along both coasts, with the one exception of Florida. There's just too many people moving there.
Yeah.
And Texas could go either way. That's a big state, depending on the region. But I see property values in the stricter states, the less free states, California, Illinois, New York, going down, at least for the next year or so. So if you're living there and you like it there, it should be a better buying opportunity. I see the Midwest, the Rust Belt, where I am buying a lot of rentals that cash flow a lot. They might go down a little bit, but I think they're going to hold their rents, which is all I care about.
Right.
Rents did shoot up a lot in the last year or so. I think they'll maintain and then slowly go up with inflation. They always do. They always balance out with the inflation fairly rapidly.
Right.
So, yeah, I'm a big fan of cash flowing real estate. And I'm a big fan of governments messing things up. So I bet against whatever they say. They say we're going green. I buy oil. And to hedge my bet, I buy silver because you need that to make solar panels. So if you can't accurately predict, unless you own the casino, just bet on both sides and then you'll win.
Right. I love it, man. Well, Eric, dude, I appreciate the entertaining conversation. I hope you're either in LA or Vegas at some point in the next year so we can do this live. I'll buy you a drink. We'll smoke a cigar or drink tea, whatever your drug of choice is. And I want to meet you in person and sketch out some of this stuff because it's fascinating. You're an interesting guy. And we're going to put up the links to your books, your kids' books. We didn't even get into that, so maybe I need to interview one of your kids next on the books that they wrote. But I really appreciate you being on, man.
I thank you so much, Scott. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Love it.